I've spent the last 6 years trying to understand why certain things work for certain people. So we can have this extraordinary process, and maybe in 4 or 5 sessions, someone can change what hasn't changed for them their entire life. Whereas for someone else, it doesn't do anything. And so it's less about this process and more about like good fit and where someone is. You know, any one person isn't a perfect match to date everybody. It's like when you find that good match, it's really extraordinary.
Imagine it's 12 months from now, and you've achieved your major life goals. How does it feel to be in the best shape of your life? To wake up energized, excited about the day? To have great relationships and friends who support you and propel you forward? How does it feel to have an excess of money? To be able to make the choices you want? To be fearless and open to trying new adventures? Imagine being connected to the universe and it providing everything you desire. It's possible over time, and your past does not dictate your future. The only thing holding you back from this vision is you. It's time to take control of our thoughts and use them to our advantage. Welcome to Richer Soul, where we achieve our dreams and bring balance to health, wealth, relationships, time, and spirituality. If you have not had a chance to listen to episodes 1 through 9, I encourage you to go back and listen to the framework behind Richer Soul and how to create the life of your dreams. You can also find all the show notes for this episode at richersoul.com.
Today's quote is from Ralph Waldo Emerson. What lies behind you and what lies in front of you pales in comparison to what lies inside of you. Today, we are going to go deep on the inside. And I'm excited about the conversation because I know how great the work Erin does. I participated in their programs, and they're helping me to move forward to achieving what I want in life. I realize a lot of people may also have areas in their life that they want to make progress to and to get started on. And that's why I think you'll have a lot of value in hearing Erin's story and then also how she helps people to move forward in what they do and how they do it. At the end of the day, it's about getting out of our own way, letting go, and taking the next step. Let's meet Erin and learn how she does it. Welcome to Richer Soul, Erin Pheil. It's great to have you join us today.
Well, thank you. It's great to be here.
And I'm excited to learn from you today. We always like to start at the beginning. What was it like when you were growing up, and how much did your family and school teach you about money?
What was it like growing up? I can start with the other one. What did your family and school teach you about money? I learned absolutely zero about money from school. I don't think I learned a single lesson, or it was just not discussed. I think it was avoided when I was growing up. And in terms of what I learned from my family, I don't think I received any specific lessons other than you need to have a piggy bank. We had a literal piggy bank, and when you find stuff, you put extra money into the piggy bank. And what I learned from my family was just watching and observing my parents. And I actually got confused because there would be times when what we did, it seemed like we had lots of money and we were very wealthy, and it didn't matter, and pick anything you want in the store. And we had a second house that we would go to on the weekends. And then there would be other times where I might ask for a gift or a piece of clothing, and it would be like, who do you think we are? How much money do we make? And I got a lot of mixed messages of like, we're good, we're okay, we're not okay. How could you spend, $10 on this? And so I remember feeling very confused oftentimes. And there was also sometimes a sense of, I remember guilt. So there would be times when I would go to, I remember very clearly one of my earlier memories around money was coming out of the mall with my mother, and we had just done school shopping for the upcoming school year. I hated it. I didn't like to do it. I didn't enjoy going shopping for clothes. But my mom had dragged me out, and here we had a bag of clothes for school, so I would look okay. And on the way to the car, it was like, do you know how fortunate you are? Do you know how lucky you are? Do you know how much I spent on you just now? And I was like, no, I have no idea how much was spent. And so this, like, I don't understand. It just seemed like this bubble or like cloudy thing up in the sky that I didn't have access to, that changed a lot of the time, and that we didn't talk about. In fact, to this day, my father still has never shared with me how much he's made in a year. I still don't know. So it's a very hush-hush topic. And so I didn't learn a lot growing up.
Was there one parent or the other who was like buy and don't buy? Or like what caused that back and forth like that? Because that's not...
Yeah, I think one parent definitely had more of a, you save, you don't spend. It's ridiculous to spend for the holidays. You know, that was my dad, and his mom had grown up around the Holocaust and prison camps, and you can lose everything kind of mindset. Whereas with my mom, it was a very different approach, and shopping was fine, and it's fine, and we can splurge. And so there were very different approaches that I would get depending on which parent I was speaking with.
Each of them have their own money story, and it gets transferred from their parents down to them, down to you. And unless you observe it or challenge it or question it, it just becomes mindless, right?
Yeah. When you're a child, you don't question what your parents tell you. I mean, what your parents tell you is law, is truth. That's how we're wired to absorb from our parents. That's how we stay alive.
It is. And we learn a lot of different things beyond money. Not always correct, right?
Yes.
One of them being the guilt that you talked about. So you told me before, though, that you had all these different bank accounts for savings. What was that all about?
Yeah, I remember. And I spent a lot of time trying to reflect back and figure out where I learned this desire to save and save and save and hold on to things. I don't have specific memories of being taught that, but one of my, I shared the memory about the mall. My other first memory as it relates to money was I had received a check from my grandmother in the mail for my birthday. It was folded into a birthday card, said happy birthday. And I don't remember, it was $10 or $20. And I was still single digits. I was like 7 or 8 or something like that. And I remember taking the check and going, okay. And I went to fold it and put it into my piggy bank. And my mom's like, no, we're going to take that to the bank. It's a check. We're going to take it to the bank and we're going to deposit it at the bank, or we're going to cash it at the bank. And I remember having a meltdown and grabbing the check back from her going, no, it has to be saved. Like, I didn't understand how checks work. It has to be saved. It's going in the piggy bank. We're not taking it anywhere. It's not leaving. And there was this sense of like panic and like telling my mother it was not okay for us to go to the bank, that the check had to stay here with me. And that, I have no idea where I picked that up from. But as I got older, and especially with when online banking was introduced and you could have savings accounts, I remember opening up, I think I had at one point like 10 or 15 different savings accounts. There was one for my bike, and there was one for insurance, and there was one. It got to the point where my financial advisor was like, okay, this is a little bit overboard. Like, you have like bank accounts with like small amounts for you're saving up for everything. But I don't know where I picked that up from, because I was never introduced to that concept. I think I had read a few financial management books as a teenager that had said, have different accounts. And I took that very literally.
It works. When you give money a purpose and you start saving towards it, it becomes clear. It's like, okay, that's the bike account. And when the bike account hits the number that I can afford the bike that I want, then you just go buy the bike. And it takes a lot of the emotion out of it and a lot of all the other stuff that goes along with money. So how much of that still kind of reflects in your adulthood with behaviors?
Yeah, good question. Well, I definitely don't have guilt. That's not something, I think I worked through that. And I do have different savings accounts, but it's not to the extent I had in my early 20s where I was like at 15 or 20 or something ridiculous like that. I have kind of sub ones that I still use, and I appreciate that, and keeping money in different places allocated for different things, especially for surprise tax bills or insurance every year. Some of the things that I know are going to be set expenses, the money goes straight into there. So I don't think about it as that's mine. It goes into where it's allocated.
And that's a smart way to do things. You know, people act surprised. Oh, it's tax time. I don't have money for taxes. Or, oh, the insurance bill came. You knew the insurance bill was coming. It comes every year at the same time. You know about how much it's going to be. Like, I don't understand why people are surprised by these things. They're just normal things. You know?
Yeah, I've had that same thought that there's something going on there. It's almost like, oh gosh, my birthday's tomorrow. It's like, yes, it happens every year at the same time without fail. There's never been a year where it didn't happen on this date. And the same thing would happen when I was running my first business, which was a consulting agency. And we would have invoices go out. I remember I was still in my very early 20s when I set the business up. And I remember the first few times I had sent invoices out, and I was working with, much smaller clients, sole proprietors at the time. And there were a handful that were like, oh, I can't pay because it's tax time. And I don't have any money. And I remember thinking, well, like, wait, but you knew that this would be coming. Like, did you not plan for it? And that was when I had that first reaction, as you did, kind of like, but this is a set thing. It happens every year. Not everybody thinks that way.
No, as a matter of fact, most business owners don't. And the reason the IRS takes money out of every paycheck is because they know people are the same. And if you actually had to pay taxes at the end of the year, you'd freak out at how much they actually were, because most people are more focused on how much they get back, not on how much they pay. And most people wouldn't be able to pay the IRS, and that would cause major trouble. But when they take a little bit every month or every paycheck, you just don't notice it. You're like a frog in warm water.
Yeah.
And so didn't do that, but they very quickly learned that they had to do that because they couldn't collect it otherwise.
Makes sense.
So you started an entrepreneurial journey very young. Was there a reason you decided to do that versus following the traditional path?
There was. Absolutely. So I completed my master's degree. I had graduated undergrad early. I took time off, and then I completed my graduate schooling early. And I think I was like 20 or something by the time I was done, even with me taking time off in between. I just got done with school very early, and I was quite naive. I was like, well, I've got this shiny master's degree, so everybody out there is going to be falling over themselves wanting to hire me. Like, who wouldn't want to hire me with this fancy degree that I just got? I had a master's in digital media. My undergrad was in psychology. And this was right around the time of the .com boom. So I was like, I am going to be so in demand because I'm one of the first people to have an advanced degree in digital media. Like the schools at the time were still trying to just like get enough content out and keep up with things. So my dream, I followed my dream. I moved to the mountains. I was in Colorado and moved up to the mountains. And I remember my first week, I went around to the 3 web companies that were up there and showed them my resume, showed them my degree. And I was like, hi, I'm here to be hired. Not realizing that they were all tiny mom and pop shops kind of doing things themselves. And to my shock, nobody wanted to hire me. And so I was up in the mountains in a small geographical area. And none of the three companies were interested in me. And so I sat there going, well, that didn't go as planned. I guess it's time I need to compete against them, and I'll create something that is really extraordinary. And I'm going to create my own company. I guess I got to do it myself. So it hadn't occurred to me that I would be an entrepreneur. It wasn't even on my mind, but it was one of those situations where I realized, well, this is what I get to do now. And so that's how I started.
How did you get through school and the master's by 20?
I had skipped kindergarten and I was young. I was in college by the time I was 16. And then I also graduated from college early. And then I finished my master's degree early as well.
Okay. People used to push their kids ahead. And nowadays, it seems like everyone holds their kids back. And so you don't see so many people graduating that quickly.
I think it had a massive ripple effect on my life. When you are 2.5 years younger than all of the kids around you, it doesn't matter what your intellectual capacity is, your emotional, psychological, developmental age. The age of, I was 9 in middle school, and here I am with like 11-year-olds and 12-year-olds. And that's a significant difference developmentally and emotionally. And I always had that sense of like, I'm slightly different. I don't quite understand things the way that the kids around me do. And that allowed for kind of ostracizing and some bullying, and just the sense of like, I am so different than everyone. And it doesn't matter how hard I try. I just don't quite get things. And the boys don't like me. And the girls think I'm a little bit off. And I was just, that's quite a gap at that young age. Like the difference between like a 6-year-old and a 9-year-old is quite substantial.
It is, but then eventually it all equalizes, right?
It did. It got better. By the time I got to high school and college, it wasn't so bad.
But then the question is do you hold on to it, or can you let go of it? And then that's right. A big part of it. And we'll talk a little bit about that as we kind of go on. So you started the digital media company, tremendous success, life wonderful, like all good?
Mm-hmm. It was for a while. It just, it grew and it grew. And suddenly I had my life partner that I met, and I taught him how to code, so I didn't have to code, and I was doing design. And then I found a designer, and then I was managing, and suddenly I had a team, and we grew to be a really well-respected agency. We were nationally ranked and award-winning, and I had a blast. I'd say for probably the first 10 to 12 years that I was doing it, and absolutely loved it. And then the industry changed so much, and the work became, commoditized and cheapened, and overseas labor. And then suddenly you were just building a website. The amount of competition changed. You needed to have a website and SEO and content management and content strategy and social media and link optimization. And now it has to work for these mobile devices that are out there. And now there's all sorts of mobile device, and it just changed. And I found myself as the amount of competition increased, and then the amount that was required, I just found myself no longer enthused or excited about doing that work anymore. Realized I wanted to shift gears.
And I think that's something people don't realize. The world keeps changing. And I think in every single industry, competition's up, right? The level of everything gets harder and harder. And it's been changing faster and faster. And so you always have to figure out, either you specialize in niche in, stay a step ahead, or be ready to pivot and do something totally different.
Yes, I'm seeing that in my industry now.
In what sense?
So when I started the Mind Fix group, 5-6 years ago, it was such a blue ocean. There were not a lot of companies, I'd say, specializing in rapid transformation. When I would share with people that, hey, your procrastination problem, your self-worth and self-doubt problem could be a thing of the past. in a couple months. Give me an hour or two a week. It was so shocking to most people. Like, that's not possible. I've gone to therapy my whole life. I've worked with my coach for the last 2 years. That's really hard. There's no way. And I understood that too, because I had gone to therapy since I was 12, and I was worse off, if not, nothing had changed after 25 years of that. And it was so just mind blowing to people that kind of change was possible so quickly. And now, as team members have broken off and started their own thing, and there's this course over here and course over there, and all of the breakthroughs in the industry that have been exploding. And now with online, everybody can do it, pop out a course and pop out a certification. And people are like, I love to coach. It's the amount of people, kind of like with the web industry, what I saw, the amount of people offering transformational change services and alternatives to traditional coaching and therapy. There's a lot now. And I think it will keep shifting and changing in the upcoming years as well.
Does it all work?
I would say that's not the case. But that's an interesting there's a lot of nuance behind the answer. I've spent the last 6 years trying to understand why certain things work for certain people. So we can have this extraordinary process, and maybe in 4 or 5 sessions, someone can change what hasn't changed for them their entire life. Whereas for someone else, it doesn't do anything. And so it's less about this process and more about like good fit and where someone is. And just like, any one person isn't a perfect match to date everybody. It's like when you find that good match, it's really extraordinary. And so I think what a lot of people starting out don't realize when they're looking to get into coaching or services, I certainly didn't know, and it was a rapid learning curve, is that being able to understand when the service and the modality is likely a good fit for someone, and being able to filter out like, hey, what we do is great, but you're probably not going to see the success that other people do. Here's why. And being able to have that conversation and know when certain modalities work and when they don't.
Some people have a recipe. Some people have a cookbook. And some people know how to make those little subtle changes as they're cooking to say, hey, it needs this or that, or a little of this will make this extraordinary. And it's funny because just as you're talking about this industry, you go back to your other industry. One of the biggest things that I see today is everyone and their brother is starting a marketing agency. And there's a million of them. And I see it with my clients, and I see how much they spend and how little the results they get. And in the world of life coaching, I don't know the current numbers because I haven't studied it in probably, since like the beginning of this podcast, so going back to 17 or 18, very few of them actually made any money. The majority of them were just a hot mess. They were people who might have figured something out in their life, and then there's such a low barrier to entry that everyone can come in. And the other problem is, and this is what I struggle with a lot, and it goes back to the marketing. Some people are really good at marketing, and they're not very good at delivering. And the people who are the best at delivering generally don't know how to market. And so I have always found in not just this space, but this whole, I'm going to call it woo-woo space. There's just like, it's just so hard to figure out what's good, what's bad, what works, what doesn't, and what's going to work for you. Yeah,
absolutely. And, when you're running an agency or you're running something in the world of in different industries, you can have a very clear agreement of what success looks like. Here's the deliverable. We will be shipping you 8,000 coffee mugs. Every mug will have a Christmas tree printed on it. They will arrive not broken by Wednesday. And success is so clear. And it's like agreed upon. It's like, hey, it arrived Friday. This is not an agreement with our contract. This is not okay. In the world of personal development, mental health, medical wellness, rapid transformation, suddenly looking at what does success mean? It's a challenging conversation. Some people know, some people don't know, some people desire something, but they don't realize they need something else first. Some people think they want to go in this direction, and as they're exploring and growing, they realize that there's other opportunities. It is not a linear, clear, here is your deliverable. This is exactly what will happen by this date. Humans are so there's like the process is multifactorial and multivariable, and everybody has different, there's so many variables involved that trying to understand what works and what success is, that alone can be a challenging conversation. What am I signing up for? What am I getting if I work with you? And then as a company that's looking to deliver results and success, looking to define that and walking that boundary between what we can confidently deliver and promise versus we don't know how you will respond, what you'll be doing on your end, what your biochemistry is a ever evolving and can be sometimes a challenging game to play.
So how do you figure out what's going to help somebody make a difference in their life?
How do we figure out what is going to help someone?
Yeah.
Well, we have a number of processes and modalities and ways of working with people that through a lot of trial and error and testing, a lot of it on ourselves internally with the team, we have found to deliver really extraordinary results consistently. Nothing 100%. And yet what we can share is these processes and this system works consistently for people who are in this situation or who are looking for X. We can share who it doesn't work for, and we can share what people typically experience. And that's what we're able to do, to say with confidence exactly what a specific outcome will be every time, like the coffee mugs would be irresponsible.
How much depends on the person, though, and for them to do the work? Because even in my thing, people, do you have a guarantee? No, because I don't know how you're going to behave. I can't guarantee your behavior.
Yeah, we actually, it was interesting. When I started the business, I had 100% no questions asked money back guarantee. I was so excited about the breakthroughs in the work that we had and what was possible, and so that anybody who would take advantage of an offer like that. And lo and behold, that was a very expensive business mistake where I took on and the company took on all of the responsibility. We had people who literally didn't show up to their sessions. As you know, there's not a lot of requirements. There's not a lot of homework. There's not a lot you have to do. You show up to your sessions and you're honest in your sessions. We had people who wouldn't show up. We had people who confessed they weren't honest and that they had lied and withheld in their sessions, and yet still went through the program, saw changes and results. But then because we had this no questions asked at the end, they'd go, I'd like my money back. And we're sitting here going, wait, you didn't even show up. Or you mentioned that, so that was a really powerful learning experience on my end. So we shifted that.
And I don't blame you. There are some people who, by their very nature, are going to be attracted to those offers because they know at the end they're just going to ask for their money back, regardless of whether or not they have success.
I didn't realize that. And again, quite naive because I'd never done that. And it didn't cross my mind that someone might do that. We have a conditional guarantee now where someone is able to work with us for a short period of time and they'll get to experience like, holy cow, this is amazing. And by a certain time, it's like, you're going to commit. We just had someone who began working with us and he confessed I actually only signed up because I saw there was a guarantee. And I just want to let you know that I'm thinking about leaving because I just wanted to, kind of kick the tires. And so it's an interesting dilemma. I wouldn't say most people are like that. And if you get one or two of those a year, but it helps other people take, push past their nerves of this feels a little risky and take that first step, then it's worth it. But you're exactly right. There are people out there who will be attracted and will potentially take advantage of those offers.
Today's episode is sponsored by Profit Answer Man Podcast. Did you know that most small business owners hate looking at their financials? It's one reason they may struggle with business success. The Profit Answer Man podcast helps them ensure they are profitable and can pay their employees and weather the storms we all have to face. It's built on the Profit First methodology of pay yourself first. The Profit Answer Man podcast is a must listen to for every small business owner and anyone who wants to help them survive and thrive. Check it out on your favorite listening platform. I try to put up barriers to prevent them from even coming into the system so that you don't have to deal with it, because they are people who can't, like, if a person can't commit, they're not going to commit. So why waste your time is kind of the way I feel. And if they're not willing to do a little bit of work, then it's not worth it. And that even just in normal everyday situations, what I found, somebody sends you an email and asks for something. If you just send them an email back and ask for clarification, I would bet 80% of the time they don't even respond. And now you don't have to do the work, because you created a little barrier that they now had to do something. And it is amazing how few people will take action, even the smallest step.
I appreciate this conversation because there are days as I work from my home office that I think, I wonder if this is just me. I wonder if I worded the question slightly differently. I wonder if I had sent the email at a different time of day, like, is there something that is going on where the lack of response or that what you're talking about, I didn't realize that was a universal thing that you experience as well.
It is. So I'll make two comments. If you're sending emails to someone new that you really haven't had conversations with, we tend to use Tuesday or Wednesday mornings because they're over the Monday rush and they're still a little fresh and they still have time to deal with it. Whereas you send something Friday afternoon, especially at work, by Monday, it's buried. You're getting nothing out of that. Like, so there is a certain amount of timing, but when it comes to taking action, I will make fun of, there's a gym out there that for $10 a month, you can say you belong to a gym. They don't actually want you to come in. Should you show up, they might hand you some pizza. And should you pick up the weights and put them down a little too hard or with a little too much of a grunt, their little lunk alarm goes off and they tell you to go away. But for $10 a month, you can say, I belong to a gym. And literally, that's how they make astronomical amounts of money. And they're all over the country.
Good to know.
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny what you learn about the way people behave. So we've kind of touched around it. What exactly do you do for people?
So we specialize in working with entrepreneurs and CEOs and leaders. And they typically come to us when they're experiencing friction or resistance in some area of their entrepreneurial or life's journeys where, a lot of times we're cruising and things are just smooth and easy and everything's going our way. And then we hit these points, almost like, at a stair step point where you're expending energy, you're trying different things, you're reading books, you're trying to get help, and certain things just aren't shifting or changing. And oftentimes people will go, I feel like I'm in my own way, or I feel like I'm being held back. I know there's so much more, there's more potential, there's more for me. I'm feeling a little stuck here and I need help getting over that hump so I can take off again. And so when people come to us, they are looking for shifts or improvements or changes, usually relatively quickly. They're looking for it. They value speed in some area of their personal or business life. And they realize that if they do work to shift things internally, their outer world will shift. So we will work with people who are looking for changes to, say, anything from procrastination to perfectionism, anxiety or anger, difficulty saying no, difficulty setting boundaries, self-doubt, self-esteem, fears, say fear of success or fear of failure, fear of public speaking. So what we do is we help people take things and they show up and they go, here's the problems in my life. These are all problems. And by the end of their program, which is usually a matter of months, we move those things to the bucket of these are no longer problems. These are no longer holding me back. And so we get to really make massive differences in people's lives and how they think, how they feel, and then the actions that they take on a daily, weekly, monthly basis.
You mentioned something interesting, and I'm going to ask you about it. You said you serve entrepreneurs and CEOs. Is there a reason you don't serve just people in general?
Great question. So, yes and no. We actually do serve people in general, but we market to the leaders and the entrepreneurs. When I opened up shop years ago, it was just like anybody can work with anyone. And what I found is that because of the results and what we did, it attracted people who had more of this, like, I'm broken, fix me kind of attitude, or the world is an awful place and poor me, kind of what we call victim mentality. Like, this is bad and this is bad. My kids are bad. My wife is bad. My job is, everything is bad. Whereas when we would work with entrepreneurs and leaders, there was almost this built-in sense of personal responsibility. And I know that if I change, other things change, and an inherent sense of the ROI that would be there and the value they placed on being able to wake up in the morning feeling great, or the value that they placed on if the negative thoughts were no longer there, the value that they knew would get created if they didn't procrastinate anymore. So we were able to provide our premium services and charge premium prices because the value that we were creating for entrepreneurs, and when they would show up from a place of personal responsibility and I'm going to do this work, we realized that those were the people that we could get the best results for, make the biggest difference, appreciated the work, and that we enjoyed doing the work with the most. So that's who we focus on. At the end of the day, though, like, the secret is if someone comes to us and they deeply are ready for positive change, and they're like, I'm ready to do some work, I'm here for it, and I understand what's on the other side and how important this is to me and my family, even if they don't run a business or are in business, we'll work with them. It really is that need and desire for positive change and showing up for oneself.
It's funny because I've gone to Tony Robbins. You're in a room with 14,000 people. And the only people who generally take action are the business owners in the C-suite. And they bring all these other people from their company and they don't do anything. And it's just amazing. And I don't know what it is that makes them different, but they behave different. And I think a big part of it is what you said. They see a return on their investment.
I was in Nashville a couple weeks ago, and I attended an EO, Entrepreneurs Organization, special private event. And it was, and I'm blanking on the author. We could Google it real quick, but it was the author of the book Driven. And he has spent the last whatever years studying entrepreneurs, leaders, and business owners and asking the very question that you asked. What is so different about these people? Why do they take action? He's actually narrowed it down to there's a genetic component, and that it is about 10% of the population that are wired to have this drive in them, this drive that gets them up in the morning, that keeps them going. They have the same fears. They are wired the same way. They have similar genetics. They are motivated by certain things. Dopamine works differently in their systems. They're motivated by like the pursuit versus the quick hits. I listened fascinated to this guy for 3 hours as he talked about it. And everybody in the room was just like, that's me. I left my book there. It's getting shipped back to me. So I didn't make it past the first chapter, but that question has been researched and answered all the way down to a genetic component.
Well, so within genetics, there are two components, right? There's the gene itself, and then there's also the ability to turn genes on and off.
Epigenetics. Yeah, exactly.
Epigenetics.
Right.
So I'm wondering how much of this is epigenetics. Can we change it? Or is it, oh, well. So it's funny because I always look at the ant world. And in the world of ants, there's the worker ants. They just go in a straight line back and forth. And then there's the roamer ants who they come out and they go find and forage new. And then, I don't even know the full, but they all seem to have a certain genetic trait to how they behave in that ecosystem. And I'm wondering if that is true for humans. And if that is true for humans, I bet you it happens at a very young age, in which case what we really need to do is to grab them at 8, 9, and 10 and put them in a whole different ecosystem to truly allow that. Because first of all, I don't even know that maybe it's as high as 1 out of 10, as you say. I would think it was even less. But if that's the case, they feel alone. They're like, how come I don't fit in this system? And it takes a while to overcome that. We could pull them out and put them into the system that allowed them to just go. Then, boom. I think in the meantime, we drug them.
Done.
ADHD and all of
problem
that.
Solved. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. A lot. That was actually a large portion of the talk, is that a lot of people who are driven feel very alone, feel very different, and get slapped with ADD or ADHD from an early age.
Such a shame. Interesting. Mm-hmm. So just for the audience's understand, I went through one of your programs, still working with you guys. Looking to get to basically an even higher level, right? Stepping up and being able to do that. What was kind of really, and I went for very different, I don't think I came in for your standard reasons. I came in with some different things, which is irrelevant. But what I found really cool was that there were actually families there. There were like husband, wife, kids, and kids' spouses. And in just the transformations that people got in a single couple of days of being able to have better conversations amongst family, to work through all of those different issues and barriers we all create.
So to be clear, when you're saying that you went through a program, so we have two different ways that we work with people. We have we have private one-on-one programs that are done virtually via Zoom, and people meet with us each week for a set period of time. And then we also have quarterly events that are held in Colorado. And that was where I first met you, as you had attended one of our events, and there were quite a few families at that one.
Well, I guess, yeah, I'm assuming you don't do family on the Zoom. They all have to go do their own work separately.
Yes, exactly.
No, but it was just cool to see that people would, come together like that and bring about the change. And I'm part of both programs, so I see the differences and I get it. And people can work through that. What do you think has changed that now we can bring about rapid transformation? Because, as you said, in every psych book I read or all the stuff that I've been seeing for years, you go to a psychologist, you're going to be there for 20 years and nothing is going to change for most people.
That was my personal experience. I know this is a delicate topic. In fact, I was uninvited from a podcast once when I shared that I didn't necessarily believe that standard psychotherapy was the most effective route for most people who are looking to change. But that was my personal experience for decades, and also the experience of many people that I knew. I studied psychology when I was an undergraduate, and there was a way of thinking not that long ago, 30 years ago, that to work through problems, you would sit and talk about things in a conversation. A little, you talk about it, talk therapy. And then as the 90s rolled around, there was the updated, actually people just don't have enough serotonin. It's a chemical thing. Let's actually put people, let's look at pharmacology and let's put them on drugs because there's just something wrong with their brains probably. And I would say that those two approaches don't work for a lot of people. And in the past 10 years, there's been a growing number of different modalities. And I think many of them may have existed in the past, but with the internet, the sharing and then the rapid improvement of them and then the resharing, and suddenly people are learning this and combining this. There's just been an explosion in the different ways that people can look to create positive change that didn't exist 50 years ago, that were not even options if someone wanted to explore something, when my parents were growing up.
In a previous life, I used to sell some of those drugs. And when you read the studies, they show that they literally have no effect. I mean, I would joke and I'd be like, most of these patients need a swift kick in the ass. And for those that don't and that have an actual imbalance, here's a pill. But the amount of people who actually could benefit from the pill was in the single digits because that wasn't really the issue.
There's a book for anybody that is curious about this topic that I cannot recommend strongly enough. And it's called Lost Connections. And it starts out kind of an expose and research on what was done in the 90s and some of these studies looking at the efficacy of drugs like Prozac and what, they may have, there was something that I remember just being so blown away. They had done something like they looked at 100 studies for Wellbutrin. And I think there were 3 that indicated it worked better than the placebo. And then they got it on the shelf, out of 100. And that was what they...
No. So, one of the things that came out of these studies, if you actually looked at them, when you looked at the placebo rates of depression compared to the active, both the placebo and the active dramatically increased because people now had somebody to talk to. There was a connection. They felt more. It was partially placebo and partially just being in that. I saw Patch Adams talk years ago, and he was a doctor. He said the reason people come in is because they need a hug, not because they're sick.
Oh, well, the premise behind this entire book is that for quite a while, there's just been this narrative that if you are, say, dealing with something like depression, it's a chemical issue. There's something wrong in your brain. And they share, like, you can't measure actual serotonin levels. It's not something you could just go and take a blood test and you have exact, accurate readings. But the concept behind this book is I think he found, I believe there was 7. I've not read this book for quite a long time, but there are 7 main areas where if you are lacking in one or more of these, it's human nature to present as being depressed, as clinically depressed. There were things like if you are lacking and you don't have meaningful work, if you're a factory worker and you could get replaced every day, if you have no connection to nature, if you're living in one of these mega cities in the middle of pollution and you don't leave the buildings and you never see trees, if you do not have social support or community, if you do not have any hope that your future could be good or better, like they listed a number of things that if you experience these things, it's normal to present as clinically depressed. And he went through a number of case studies around the world where all they did was shift one of these connections that had been lost for these people who had, no, you need these drugs. And the depression lifted without any drug intervention. So it's a fascinating concept, and people can go through and go, hey, am I lacking in any of these areas of life? If so, perhaps I can shift something in my life. And it's not something wrong with my brain. It's actually my brain working correctly and sharing what I need as a human.
And that's along the lines of what Patch Adams was talking about, just being part of human connection and not being stuck. And for a lot of these people, it was being alone. They even talked about this with Medicare patients, is they want to go to the doctor because that's the only socialization they get. And that's the only time somebody listens to them. And so it drives up the cost of healthcare, and it's not about that particular thing. And that's why they even say, like, they've started some studies with putting daycares in nursing homes. So you got young kids and elderly, and it does wonderful for the elderly. And I think it also probably helps with the kids too, in bringing about the connections. So those are all the legal drugs. There's a whole host of other drugs that have been making differences out there and so forth. And it seems to be becoming more prevalent or maybe more accepted. I'd love to hear your thoughts around psychedelics.
I'm a huge supporter of psychedelics. I've seen it absolutely change lives. The work that is being done with MAPS, the Multidisciplinary Association of Psychedelic Sciences, is extraordinary. The clinical research that's being done on how psychedelics can help people dealing with PTSD, anxiety, trauma. It's really extraordinary. I have personal experience. It's made a large impact, really positive impact on my life, on the lives of many people very close to me. And I've seen, while I caution people from falling into the trap of believing that it's just a magic wand, or that just by itself it'll fix everything. In terms of psychedelics being a powerful tool, that is really what I've seen, experienced, and what the research is showing as well.
And I don't disagree with you, because all we have to do is go to the street corners in most major cities and you will see drugs don't help people. Most of those people have, unfortunately, gone into very bad situations because of drugs. So I totally agree. I think it's part of a bigger transformation or therapy or support type of system to help people break through a barrier, per se. It's not, taking drugs all the time. Because I read a book it was a little while ago. And they were just talking about how much Silicon Valley is taking microdosing just because of the creativity and all of that goes on. So we shall see what it all brings about.
Absolutely.
Is there anything that we should have talked about that we didn't get a chance to? A million things? No.
Goodness. I think what I enjoy sharing is spreading a bit of hope about what's possible, about what we see here behind the scenes each day at our company that many people still consider to be impossible. And I think sometimes sharing many case studies or just sharing what we know to be true these days that, say, even myself 5 years ago or 6 years ago would never have believed. I think that can be fun to talk about, a handful of people and what we see.
Let's talk about them.
So fun. Like I sit here and I can, I'll just go back through some recent clients. We have seen people with, I can just kind of share some of the symptoms or challenges. We've had people arrive at our doorstep, some dealing with depression, some dealing with, say, self-doubt, or feeling like they're not worthy or they're not deserving or they're not important. Some people dealing with kind of like freeze or procrastination in their life. And we have seen people who have been dealing with these challenges for months, years, and some of them decades. And we watch them shift in a matter of months. And when I say months, this is not months of doing hard work or repetition. And I can speak to this quickly, but when you approach change from the angle of subtraction instead of addition, we see change happen quickly. It's not instant for everyone. It's not a week or two for everybody, but the window within which people truly can experience deep, meaningful, and lasting change has shrunk down from never to decades to years to oftentimes months with, say, an hour or two a week. And so what I can speak to, if it's helpful, is this concept of subtraction versus the standard approach.
Can you explain, what do you mean by subtraction?
Sure. So if you think about, if I have a bunch of splinters, shrapnel in my arm, and I'm in a lot of pain, and I want to get to a space where I'm not in pain, there I could put Band-Aids over these splinters. I could put numbing cream over. I could add things to the problem, what's there, to try and mask it or numb it or to not feel it. That's one way. And many approaches for change or experiencing relief suggest that addition or doing more is what's required. When you identify the cause of the pain and you pull out those splinters, you subtract the root cause of why you're feeling uncomfortable. You don't have to manage or the issue. You don't have to keep addressing it over and over. There's no repetition required. You're pulling out the root cause of why you're experiencing a challenge. And that allows for rapid transformation. If you pull out a splinter, the pain doesn't return. In fact, you often forget that it was even there in a very short period of time. So in the work that we do, we focus on identifying the root cause of why someone is experiencing a pattern or challenge in their life, and then subtracting it instead of giving them tools or strategies or techniques to manage the challenge, to try and overwrite the challenge, to help them numb or push through or deal with the challenge or the symptoms. Here's how you deal with it: more meditation, more breath work, more exercise, more cold plunges to try and manage it, deal with it, not feel it. Or if you focus on subtraction, let's find out why these symptoms are there, what your frustrations are, and let's pull the problems out at the root. And what we have found is that approach allows for deep, meaningful, lasting change for most people.
Coming from the world of medicine, the majority of what doctors do is cover up symptoms. Right? When you look at a lot of drugs, a lot of things, they don't actually cure the underlying issue. They just cover up the symptoms and they don't actually fix it.
cannot agree more. There was a day, maybe 5+ years ago, that I went to the doctor and I said, I am suddenly having panic attacks. I have not had anxiety my entire life. I don't know what's happening. Something's off. And they handed me a bunch of Xanax and said, go see go talk about it with someone. And it had turned out I was living in black mold. And I had a very serious black mold injury to my body and my brain. But I was given things to numb the symptoms. And that just felt so kind of meta for what a lot of the medical and mental wellness industry, how they focus on things.
And that's true. I mean, if you look at the biggest diseases we have are cardiac, diabetes. And if you actually read the PI, which is the prescribing information, it says following modifications to diet and exercise. And the funny thing is, I would guess, and I'm not exactly sure, but if you asked your doctor how much time they spent in medical school learning about diet and exercise, it might be 8 hours each. They have no idea how to actually, they don't know how to create health. And so that's one of the things that people have to deal with. So it's finding the right people who can actually solve your problems instead of ending up in Band-Aids. Was there another case you wanted to cover, or did that kind of cover what you were trying to get across?
Well, I just wanted to share the what we see, what we've seen as possible, and how it's possible, that different approach, the concept of subtraction versus addition.
Big fan. It's time to learn the secrets of life. What's your secret to living an abundant life?
Gratitude. It's so easy to live in the future and live in the space of what we don't have. And I find that when I take time to focus on everything that I do have, that sense of, I'm able to connect to that sense of abundance.
I think that's our number one answer for this question.
Okay.
It becomes
not original.
not original, but how many people do you think actually practice it?
I don't know.
Yeah. A handful. What did you learn later in life that you wish you would have learned sooner?
Oh my gosh, that concept that we just talked about, subtraction, or that change can happen when root causes are addressed. If I had what we do for our clients back when I was a teenager, I don't even know what would have been possible for me.
That's massive. And it comes back to our first question. School doesn't teach us money. They don't teach us how to live. They don't teach us how to think. They're putting Band-Aids on people. Ah, well. So if you were to give an 18-year-old one specific piece of wisdom, what would it be?
Anything? Any piece of wisdom at all?
Any piece of wisdom at all.
I would say that what served me well is to explore a balance between living for today and enjoying life with considering the future. I think it's quite easy for people to skew towards the work hard, prepare for the future, take care of things, sacrifice your joy and what you desire. And then there's other people who are so on the opposite end of the spectrum. And it's just like, just live as if there's no tomorrow and spend all your money because there may be no tomorrow, and live your joy and only your joy and don't think about the future. And I think what has served me well has been that blend of being able to incorporate joy and appreciating each day with making sure my future self is also going to be taken care of as well as possible.
And I would guess if they're living for today, they're not doing anything to grow for tomorrow. And so they're probably just stagnant. And the moment a storm comes, boom, you're done. And you don't get to come back the next day to live for tomorrow. If people would like to learn more about you, the programs, how do they do that?
Yeah, they can go to www.mindfixgroup.com. That's one option. They can find me on Facebook. I believe I'm the only Erin Pheil on Facebook, and friend me there and follow along as I share stories and learnings about what I experience in my life and what our clients experience. Or if they're just curious and they want to reach out to me directly, they can reach me at Erin@mindfixgroup.com.
Cool. We'll put that in the show notes. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, I actually have one other link to share that I created for anybody who was listening to this show. I made a page and it's mindfixgroup.com and it's /podcast. Someone, if they're curious or they want to explore something or something we talked about lands for them, you can book in a 15-minute call with me and we can explore whatever comes to mind.
Thank you for doing that. And I encourage people to take you up on the opportunity. But don't expect your money back. And since that one's free, it's okay.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
As I said at the beginning, I really enjoy working with Erin and her team in some of the things that they do. A big one is subtraction, which is instead of more, it's getting rid of things and letting go. And the reality is there's a ton of inner work that we probably all need to do. I know I do. And they've been very helpful with that. I'm looking forward to continued success as it goes forward. If it's something you're interested in, reach out, check out her work, and see if it's something that works for you. I know for many business owners and top-level people, there are things that hold us back from our next level. It's when we get rid of those that we become better. As a matter of fact, next week we've got on Becoming Your Best Self, Unlocking the Awakened Man Within with Pete Taylor. By the way, if you know someone who might have enjoyed this episode, would you do me a favor and share it with them? I would appreciate that. Thanks for listening. Have an abundant day.